In May of 1999, a terrified and hysterical 14-year-old girl named Ah Fong ran to a Hong Kong police station to report that she had been tormented by the ghost of a recently murdered woman. Initially, due to her young age, the police dismissed her claims as an exaggeration. However, upon further investigation into the case, they would uncover one of the most vile stories ever to emerge from Chinese history. Hey guys, Ordinary Horror Guy here, and I first want to put out a disclaimer that what you're about to view is not for the faint of heart. This was truly one of the most brutal and heinous crimes ever committed in Chinese history, so viewer discretion is advised. But ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, here is the story of the infamous Hello Kitty murder. During the 1990s, China's streets were plagued by a rapid surge of triad gang-related crimes. A triad is a criminal-based organization operating out of China. Think of it as a Chinese mafia or yakuza. They've existed for over 200 years and remain one of the largest crime syndicates in the world. However, they became noticeably more active during the 1990s after China's economy started to shift more capitalistic. Markets were less regulated, and triad gangs saw this as an opportunity to make bank by conducting illegal activity. Thus, murder, drugs, prostitution, and loan sharking were a few of many illegal practices that dominated China's streets, especially in big cities like Hong Kong, which is where our story takes place. Meet man-yee, a young Chinese woman just struggling to get by in her day-to-day life. She was born in Shenzhen, China in 1976 to a cold and uncaring family that often neglected her. When she was just a young girl, her parents abandoned her, leaving her orphaned. The Matawai girls' home eventually took her in, but due to strict age limits, she found herself back on the streets by the age of 15. Faced with a harsh upbringing and unforgiving circumstances, she turned to drug addiction, petty crime, and prostitution to survive. She began working in the red light district of Kowloon as a dancer at the Empress Karaoke nightclub. She even married one of her clients, a man named Ing Chi-yoon, and they would later have a child in the next couple of years. However, they were both drug addicts, so they only ended up enabling each other's habits. Although, as their marriage progressed, Fen slowly began to witness Ing's true colors. He became extremely abusive, and neighbors in their apartment complex often woke up to their heated arguments and the sound of their son crying. Eventually, Fen decided she had enough and made the difficult decision to leave her husband, attempt to get sober, and quit her job as a prostitute. Although, as money became an ever-increasing concern, she quickly found herself in her bad habits again and continued her line of work. By 1997, she began working at a brothel called the Romance Villa. Unfortunately, this was a common hangout spot for the scum of Hong Kong, crawling with gang members, pimps, and loan sharks, people that you would otherwise want to stay away from. People like 34-year-old Man-lok, a regular at the brothel who was also a pimp, drug dealer, and leader of a vicious triad gang. He soon became acquainted with Fen, and as they began seeing each other more and more, the relationship turned into a series of sex and drug binges. One day, during one of these long sessions, Fen stole Chen's wallet containing 4,000 Hong Kong dollars, which roughly equates to around 500 US dollars. Little did she know, she just made a mistake that would cost her her life. When Chen realized his wallet was missing, he immediately suspected Fen. When confronted, she admitted to taking it and was forced to pay the money back. Using his power and authority, he ensured she paid back every cent plus an extra 10 grand as interest. But after he determined that this still wasn't enough, he hatched a plan that would lead to her downfall. On March 17, 1999, Chen recruited two of his subordinates, 21-year-old Wai-lun and 26-year-old Shing-cho, to abduct Fen from her apartment and take her to another apartment at number 31 Granville Road. She was taken to a room on the 3rd floor where she would be held captive for a month. Strangely, the inside of the apartment was filled to the brim with Hello Kitty merchandise, including kitchenware, bedsheets, curtains, and dolls. It was a pretty eerie and ironic sight, the pink, innocent kawaii setting contrasting with the evil acts that would take place here. The original plan was to force her into prostitution under close surveillance, with Chen keeping 100% of her earnings. However, as they hung around the apartment bored and high on drugs, they devised a plan B that they believed would be more enjoyable: to begin brutally torturing her. For most people, brutally torturing someone who stole from them would be unthinkable. However, it doesn't come as a surprise when dealing with vicious triad gang members who kill people on a daily basis. What is shocking is the fourth participant in this heinous crime, Chen's 14-year-old minor girlfriend, Lao Mingfong. Lau had become involved with these men a year prior, as she was repeatedly groomed by Chen and was even believed to be one of his prostitutes. Despite being a victim of Chen's manipulation, she displayed the same cold-hearted cruelty as the 3 other men, relishing in the suffering of their victim. She found it amusing and even took it upon herself to devise creative ways of abusing Fen. When later asked why she did it, she stated she believed it was for fun. Most of the acts took place in the apartment's kitchen, but the details of what was done to poor Fen Man-yee are horrifying. So if you don't want to hear about this, skip to the timestamp displayed on the screen. She endured some of the worst tortures imaginable: physical beatings with metal bars, being strung up and used as a human punching bag, assaults, and so much more. At one point, Lau walked in on the trio kicking Fen in the head around 50 times, and she eventually joined in herself. Spices and oils were used to irritate her wounds and cause her further pain. They also poured hot candle wax and plastic onto her legs and feet until they became infected. She was also forced to consume the most disgusting things you could imagine. While these acts may already seem like the most degenerate, wicked things one human could do to another, these 4 individuals reached a level of evil beyond comprehension. While torturing Fen in the most brutally inhumane ways, they forced her to smile and laugh while this was happening, threatening more intense beatings if she didn't comply. She was often left tied to the ceiling with wire all night, malnourished and broken. Over the course of the month, the beatings continued until the group eventually got bored of it. They claimed she stopped reacting as intensely to the pain and it was no longer enjoyable. In her final days, Fen lay stiff and motionless on the bathroom floor of the apartment, succumbing to her injuries between April 14th and 15th of 1999. One day, Lau woke up in the apartment and found Fen dead on the bathroom floor, so she let the others know. But they weren't the least bit concerned. They even went out later that day to play video games at a local arcade, and came back to the apartment to go to sleep for the night. The next day, Chen was on another drug kick and finally decided to dispose of the body. He gathered lung Shing-cho and lung Wai-lun and stated, "Now she must be destroyed. She will go into thin air." They then embarked on a 10-hour-long process to get rid of the body. She was put in a bathtub where they butchered her remains and began storing it in plastic bags in the refrigerator. They later began boiling the meat on the stove to keep it from smelling, and when they got hungry, they cooked a ramen lunch on the burner right next to it. And I kid you not, they used the same exact spoon to stir both pots. But at this point, you may be thinking, they already killed the girl, so why is it called the Hello Kitty murder? Well, that's because of what happens next. After they severed her head in the bathtub, they found a Hello Kitty mermaid plush that was laying around the apartment, and they concealed it inside of the doll and sewed it shut. To this day, nobody knows what the motive was for putting the head inside of the doll, but judging from the group's tendencies to hurt people for their own amusement, they probably just did it as a last f you to the victim and thought it was funny. But finally, after all the preparations had been made, they threw most of her remains in the dumpsters outside the apartment, along with the Hello Kitty doll, while restoring the rest in the refrigerator. Inside also laid some of her teeth and a necklace that she had been wearing. Over the next month, the 4 criminals were filled with pride over the fact of getting away with murder, that is, until strange things began to happen. In the weeks following the murder, we return to the story of Ah Fong, the 14-year-old girl who claimed to have been tormented by the spirit of Fen Man-yee. As mentioned before, she manically rushed to the police station to report her experience. Except, she didn't come here just to report a ghost sighting, she also came here to report herself. Ah Fong was actually Lau Mingfong, the same 14-year-old that assisted in Fen's murder. Ah Fong was actually an alias the police gave to her to protect her identity. She claimed that if she didn't confess to the crime, then she would continue to be haunted by the spirit. So she spilled it. Every vile, disgusting detail of what happened. Not only did she lead the police to the remains of the victim, she also ratted out the 3 other men involved in the crime and agreed to testify against them in court. In exchange, she was granted immunity and all charges were dropped, not that she deserved it at all. When the police investigated the apartment on May 24th of 1999, what they found truly horrified them. Inside, they found the fridge full of human remains, and the rest in the dumpster outside along with the Hello Kitty doll. By this point, they weren't exactly aware of who the victim was, and only found out later that June after using a photo overlapping method on her skull. Now that the victim's name and face were known, it spread like wildfire throughout the media, and in a rather distasteful way. Once the story made its way into the local papers, word spread and it shocked the entire country. In the paper, it showed a picture of Fen with her child on one side, with a computer-generated image of her bound with duct tape on the other, and the headline simply said, "Girl eats and drinks." The computer-generated image basically sexualized her in a really grotesque way, and it was a pretty messed up way of reporting the story, but regardless, it was being heard nationwide. The police eventually caught up with the 3 other perpetrators, to which they were arrested and put on trial. In court, they tried to plead not guilty and claimed Fen had died of an overdose. They owned up to dismembering the body because they couldn't lie their way out of it, but the court ultimately charged them with manslaughter instead of murder. Supposedly, there wasn't enough evidence to conclude that the group had intended to kill Fen, but it was clear that she had died as a direct result of the abuse that she had endured. Consequently, Justice Peter Nguyen sentenced the 3 men to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 2020. Chen and Lung Wai-lun are believed to still be in prison to this day. However, Lung Shing-cho, by some insane miracle, managed to get his sentence reduced to only 18 years, to which he later went on to assault a 10-year-old girl and returned to prison for only 12 months. So this piece of human filth is still walking around free to this day. Yeah, the justice system took a huge L on that one. Although there is a relatively happy end to this story. The apartment building where the murder took place was demolished in September of 2012. It was later rebuilt as the now standing Soravit Hotel in 2016, where 3 Buddha portraits were placed in Fen's memory. Her son is also believed to be alive and residing in Singapore to this day. Law enforcement even gave him his mother's necklace they found at the crime scene, so he'll always have something to remember her by. But that's gonna be the end of today's video. I hope you guys found this story as eye-opening as I did, and I want to leave this on a positive note and just say that even though this world can be a very, very dark place, it can also be equally as beautiful and full of caring people. Thank you guys for watching, and if you want to hear about an allegedly true haunting, click on this video right here. Thank you guys once again, and have yourselves an awesome, blessed day.